for launch and kind of the discussions we've been having behind the scenes. So there's a couple different notes or things actually that I wanted to pull up and share with you all. As I've been collecting information over the last 3 years, either from videos, mentors, books, I put together a list or a pyramid of different growth stages, all the way from $0 of revenue all the way to the $20 to $100 million mark, which is like a pyramid, and what it takes at each stage in order to learn and unlearn specific things. So I've kind of compiled different notes and just like some strategic things. And I think most of you watching this are also at the early stages of either building a company or a startup. So I figured we might as well dive right into it. But the thing I want to highlight is it's taken us 3 years to get here. And that is due to a myriad of different reasons. I mean, we lost team members. I bootstrapped the entire company. We went back and forth on product and like positioning. So I think I would even argue the first 2 years was me just trying to understand entrepreneurship and how to lead a team, because I started Anteros when I was 22. I started doing research, and then around like 23, 24, I really started working and like trying to build the team together. But I was still finding myself. I was in my early phases of corporate experience, so I feel like there's been a lot of hyper condensed growth over the last 5 years, I would say, coming out of undergrad. From the 0 to 500K mark is what I'm gonna call us launching, because this is what we're working towards. And when I say launch, what my chief marketing officer and I basically said is, okay, we have this limited amount of inventory that we're working with. Let's do a smaller batch. So almost like a beta 2.0, because we shipped out free kits last fall just to get feedback. All the kits that we shipped out thus far have only been to get feedback on shipping, experience, product, platform. We sent out a survey and asked people some key questions, basically. Now for this launch, the reason why I'm even calling it a launch is because we're actually going to be collecting payment for the first time. That we have to learn at this phase, and especially over the next couple weeks, or at least put into practice, is how to sell and how to serve customers on a consistent basis. Spoke about PMF and the strength of it in my last video, which I think is where a lot of startups fail and are unable to get to the growth phase, which is the next part of the triangle at the 500K mark to the $2 million mark. Sure that we don't piss off 100 people or 1,000 people by charging them for the first time. So we're reducing this batch size to a very small number of customers. Things I feel like I've had to unlearn at this stage is planning, honestly, and a lot of perfectionism. These stages of being a founder, this was extremely hard for me to do, and I feel like I'm still unlearning a lot of this. I started the company about 6 months into my corporate career, and my corporate role, especially being an engineer and working in the STEM industry, is all systematized. It's all about quality, it's all about perfection. So learning that in my corporate role and unlearning it at the same time in the startup, there was clearly a discrepancy there, because I was trying to implement a lot of my corporate strategies and templates and quarterly planning from a huge established company at, again, that $20 million to $100 million mark at the tip of the pyramid, all the way down to the 0 to 500K launch. And I was like, why is this not translating? Like, why is stuff not moving, right? Why is the team not engaged? When you only have 0 to like 4 employees, you just need to get done, period, full stop. And how you do that at these early phases is going to be scrappy, and it's going to be unorganized, because again, you're just trying to ship stuff out as quickly as possible. And once we start selling stuff, we're going to need to make sure we do that consistently. So it's been, I think for me, that's why this journey has been extremely difficult, because I was going into corporate for the first time and starting a business for the first time. And it is unrealistic for you to think that you're going to be good at something for the first time that you do it. Type A, and if you're a high achiever, that is not going to come naturally to you. So I'm just letting y'all know right now, like, get uncomfortable not having, you know, systems in place and just being a perfectionist. Because if I think back to what our MVP was, we didn't have, just for some reference, this is what the product looks like today. This is what the partner kit looks like once you get it in the mail. When we shipped out our MVP kits, there was no box. All I had were the 2 swab samples. I'm gonna take this out. We didn't have the brochure for you to activate your kit because there was no software to activate the kit, okay? There were no instruction pamphlets on how to properly swab at home. The only thing I had was 2 swab samples in a bubble mailer with the biohazard bag that you're gonna put that swab sample in. But it was funny because I remember I was on a call with the team and I was like, Lord forbid that a mailman or some postal guy opens one of these bubble mailers. They're gonna be very alarmed. They're gonna be like, what in the world is this? Because it would have looked very suspicious. So that's what I mean when I say leave perfectionism at the door and ship your first early sample quickly, because we got a lot of good information. Like, we also didn't have experience printing shipping labels. That was my biggest hurdle with the MVPs. I could not figure out for the life of me how to use a printing label machine. So I had to print it out on normal paper and tape it. And it was, the entire thing looked suspicious from the outside of the product to the inside of the bag. The next batch that we shipped out actually had all of these components in it, but we still only shipped them out to gather feedback. So we got a little bit better at shipping, but then we realized there were some discrepancies in communication with the lab that didn't happen before, which we learned from, and we will definitely make sure to iterate and re-clarify on this next shipment. We got better at printing labels despite going through 3 different label printers. Anyways, I think it's gonna be a grind to get our first couple of paying customers. We've only recently started pushing out social media content because now we actually have a more so definitive date in the calendar for when launch is going to be. I've seen a lot of advice on socials, especially for direct-to-consumer products, that basically say, put up a landing page, collect people's money for a pre-order, and that's how you will use that capital to fund your first batch of inventory. There's a couple different issues with that, and a couple things that I think you guys should be aware of. Do not do that if you don't have a product in hand, or if the lead times in order for you to get that product shipped out to a customer is going to take weeks, if not months. Because what you've inherently done then is you've taken people's money for during that pre-order phase, and they're not expected to get their product within the next couple months, assuming everything goes well, especially if you need to manufacture something from scratch, go through FDA clearance. If you don't have tech packs for your fashion design styles, do not do that. Okay, people are probably going to ask for a refund, and or in the worst case scenarios, I've also seen people file lawsuits through the SBB because they think that they've been scammed out of their money. So I've seen a lot of influencers do this, and they've been documenting their journey publicly, and they tell people, hey, by the way, I don't have a product in hand and I need to figure out this. Sometimes they figure it out, sometimes they don't, especially again, if you're manufacturing something brand new for the first time. Manufacturing can take months to actually land in your warehouse for you to be able to ship stuff out. So I personally don't feel like that is good business practice. It really, again, depends heavily on what that product or service is, but I personally don't think it is that ethical. I was going through some footage and some like comments on social media the other day, and I realized I haven't really formally explained what Anteros is, and I don't even think I've shared why I started the company, so I was hoping to give a little bit of an intro. We built an at-home testing kit designed for couples that are struggling with recurring infections, so think urinary tract infections, bacterial vaginosis, yeast infections, and we're working on adding some additional biomarkers for infertility because the people that are coming to us are between your Gen Z to like millennials. So yeah, we've built the kit, and we've also been working on our software platform, which is basically where you're going to log back in to view your lab reports for your microbiome breakdown. So we do all of the analysis for you and do the partner analysis as well, or partner comparison. But yeah, the main question that we get is, why would you want to test with Anteros versus maybe going back to your urgent care or your normal doctor's visit? The test is not meant to replace any of those visits. However, we do go beyond normal sequencing, such as cultures and PCR. Most of you remember PCR testing from the Rona. So we go a level above. That's why it is very expensive to actually bring something like this direct to consumer. The type of sequencing services we use are typically only reserved for academic settings for research purposes. Once I found that out, you know, when I was going through my chronic UTI journey, which is why I started the company, because I never got the UTIs on my own. My partner was always the common denominator. Once I went down this rabbit hole of what are we doing currently in our facilities and what technology, when I found out that it wasn't really offered except in those academic settings, I said, well, we might as well be the ones to bring it to you. So this kit is essentially for those that are, again, in relationships and probably chronic sufferers of any one of these infections. However, I have spoken to people such as our biohacker friends who just want to be more proactive about their health. Again, if they're thinking about family planning in the future, or they're just curious to get their microbiome tested to see what is down there and how that could contribute their partner's health. So I originally started it for reactive healthcare purposes because that was me, but we have had interest from people that are just curious. So whichever bucket you fall into, we made this kit for you.
It's not real-time computation.
Sounds like we'll put that in the next
So what I see a lot of people doing, at least especially in the software space, is they make stuff that would be valuable to them, especially other organizations entirely. I don't think it would be a bad idea to send out like a survey with a link to the preview to your lovable wireframe, if that makes sense. So you're not necessarily giving them access to the platform, but more so you're saying, what does this look like, right? And you'll have survey questions like in the questionnaire, something similar with our platform. So I vibe coded all the wireframes, and within Figma, after you're done with everything, there is a share button at the top, and it's basically a link to the entire platform. There's no real data in there, right? It's just people looking at the components, but at least it's a little bit interactive, so they can flip through the pages and give us some standing feedback. Before you guys go in and build out all these separate tabs and these sections and spend all this technical time and effort, I would just spit something out from Lovable or Figma or whatever platform and send a link to people attached with the Google survey. Ask really meaningful questions that are open-ended and let the people tell you what they think about the platform before you even write a single line of code.
Movimiento de safari, todo pendiente de mí en el party. Y tú sabes, no pierdas el tiempo. Dale, vente, pégate lento. Bueno, dale, no pierdas el tiempo. Esta noche me puse feliz. Todo pendiente de mí en el party. Me mira bailando y se le pone nada. Con mi movimiento de safari.
What's poppin', friends? I've never used the mic indoors for the vlogs, but we're gonna try something different. I've been locked in at my desk for weeks on end. The last couple weeks have been so, man. I think for the first time in my life, I'm actually open to bringing on a co-founder, which is crazy to say because I was like anti-co-founder for a really long time. But I think like finally getting to this stage, like the reason I left corporate was to get to this stage, to have all this stuff built out. And there's still a little bit of organization that I want to get done before I start thinking about like scaling and like getting our first couple customers in through the door and like hitting recurring revenue. But these last couple of weeks have been intense. I think there's going to be a lot of like mindset shift that's occurring with the engineers of just basically instilling to them like at this stage, you're not thinking like an employee anymore. If you have equity in the company, you need to think about owning a part of the company. And I think that's so hard for people coming out of corporate or that have never worked at an early stage startup or started a business before. It's just such a big mentality shift. So I'm gonna need to try to do a better job of like shifting that focus in terms of what are the business objectives up here, what are our goals every quarter, and how do we distill these business metrics or KPIs down into systemized ways every single quarter to get from point A to point B. Because right now what I've noticed is they're measuring themselves based on the number of Jira tickets or the tasks that we have to do, the bricks we have to lay down on the road. And you don't get compensated like that in entrepreneurship. You do get compensated or rewarded for that behavior in corporate because every person has a specific task. As long as you complete task 1, 2, 3, like you're good. In entrepreneurship, it's not like that. It's like that's just what is expected of you. But if that doesn't move the needle up in the overarching business objectives, we don't do it. And we need to ask ourselves what we're doing. So we're starting discussions this week around phase 2 planning, road mapping. If you guys want to see how I'm structuring these discussions, I'm more than happy to share those systems. We're still a small team. One of our team members had to take a step back due to like personal reasons. So I'm basically handling like all of the marketing and ops on my own for now, which is totally fine. Like, thank goodness I have been able to skill stack. And that was something that I was like reflecting on at the end of last week is, dang, if I didn't take the time to like learn the email newsletter, do the social media, like do the warm outreach, I think it would have been a really large disservice to myself. So when I see people like trying to get from 0 to 1, or they're thinking about the next thing that they should, start in terms of venture, think about what skill sets you need to be able to stack along the way. Because if people leave, I've also seen this with my other founder friends, you're screwed. You're like dead in the water. And I'm not saying you need to be able to do everything in the company, but like you need to have a general awareness of everything. I've been messing around with like some of the no-code AI tools, which has been really fun for like designing the new website and getting some like exposure to the coding side, like the more technical things, has like made me appreciate what, our engineers, like our actual engineers are doing on their end. So again, it's just really interesting. I think we're also living in a time where we are democratizing a lot of the barriers to entry to acquire skills. If I had to like lay out everything that we've had to do to get like from 0 to 1, I'm like standing in front of like my little whiteboard here. You guys can't see it because it's blurry, but there's a section for my personal stuff, my travel, and then all the stuff I have to do for Anteros. And I would highly encourage you to write out your goals or your daily things, either like on a journal, planner, or whiteboard. I specifically like the whiteboard because it's large and it helps me brainstorm stuff as I'm word dumping things out into like another medium. Most important things in the beginning, again, when you're just starting out, is just speaking to people. I don't think if you're in the B2B or like software space, you should write a single line of code before you speak to somebody about your potential solution. And now you don't need to, because you can actually build prototypes with Figma, Base 44. What else is another tool that we used? There's a ton of no-code tools right now and they're expanding. So basically you can prompt engineer your way into giving you like a solid demo and MVP that's sometimes interactable, and you just share that link with those individuals or your target potential customers just to get feedback on what would you use, what's valuable, and then constructing that like survey of feedback in questions that are not going to lead the person to answer in the way you want them to. So in other words, when you are gathering statistical data or evidence, scientific format, do not ask leading questions. You want to keep them very open-ended to make sure that what you're solving for is actually what the person is asking of you versus you putting a solution in front of their face. So that is like the MVP customer discovery interviews that like investors typically ask for in the early days, especially at the pre-seed stage. They're like, how many people have you talked to? What were the patterns in their feedback, so on and so forth. And that is to give you validation in terms of how sticky this business may be. because if you just have a one and done solution, you don't have a business if you don't have recurring. Second thing is, again, this week I've had to pick up a little bit more on the marketing front. So because we're going direct to consumer, this may or may not be as applicable to you, again, if you're doing like B2B software. If you have a direct to consumer product and you're sitting in front of consumers, stuff like branding, I would argue, is important across the board, no matter what vertical or business model you have, but specifically for the D2C e-com space, you need to have good branding or figure out like what your associations are with your product or service, because that is going to ultimately tailor who's responsive to your messaging and the stuff you're putting out into the world. A ton of the branding myself in the early days because we didn't have a budget for it, but then most recently have connected with somebody in the space who took what I built and basically elevated that top 10% that was left. And so we revamped the fonts, the colors, and as well as some of the mood boards and creative direction to refine what I had in my brain to make it more professional looking. When people go onto your website, like that is your landing page to show people, you know, who you're trying to target and to what capacity. So if you have the means to do it early on, I would definitely say invest in branding. If you don't, it's not going to be a deal breaker, but just keep that in your roadmap somewhere to go back in and reinvest. It's not uncommon for companies to launch first in the marketplace and then do a rebrand a couple years later. And then the third thing I would say kind of goes back to the customer discovery interview. So I would have started to, it's not that I wasn't speaking to customers early enough, because obviously I started my journey basically cold DMing people in the chronic Facebook support groups that I was a part of, because I was just looking for answers to my recurring symptoms. And at the time, I didn't know those were customer discovery interviews. I was genuinely just looking to see what other people had done to manage their chronic condition. And after speaking with them, some of them agreed to giving me a call. Others were, you know, just DMing me back and forth. I started to piece patterns together. But what I'm realizing now that I didn't do such a great job of is trying to understand if those people's number one problem was the problem that I was going to solve with the partner kit, the service, or whatever you're trying to bring into the market. The reasoning for that is because I kind of mentioned this in my last video about finding product market fit. If you're not solving somebody's number one problem or the most painful thing that they're struggling with, you might not have as sticky of a business. I'm not saying you won't have a business. I'm just saying that the cost to acquire a customer might be higher versus if you try to solve their number one pain point. And early on, again, I wasn't thinking about any of this stuff because I didn't know any better. But now, as we've started to go back out to interview people in like a phase 2, as we've started to have the physical kit done, but also the platform and the software, this is what I'm going to be focusing a lot more on to see what are their number one problems in their intimate or reproductive life, and can we service to those pain points? Because at that point, you just alleviate a lot of like the energy and the barriers for the marketing side. Anyways, if you guys want me to put together a more structured go-to-market plan, happy to do so. This has been like our life over the last like 2 years. And we definitely could have gone to market a lot sooner had I known a lot of these things, quality feedback, so on and so forth. But we're still here, we're still alive, we're still being intentional with asking, you know, couples and individuals what they want out of this type of test. So I'm very excited to finally launch into the marketplace and get people's input, but also iterate as the technology continues to get better and better and as we start to get biome insights. So in the next video, I will be out in Oregon for the first time, and you guys will catch me on the West Coast. Good morning, friends! It's birthday. She's picking up some birthday gifts. She's about to get in the car. What do you have? I don't know, I'm trying to open it. We're reporting in from Oregon. Portland, Oregon. I don't have anywhere to put y'all right now. Oof, this is tough. Oh, I came here to celebrate her alongside to support the launch of her new magazine. But it's been a really wholesome time thus far. It has been raining nonstop. Well, it's been raining on and off since I got here. It's just that time of year. We have rainy season. But very first impressions, it's much cleaner than I anticipated. People are very wholesome. And people actually enjoy living here, unlike other cities in America where they're kind of like passing cities. So I've enjoyed like meeting all her friends. With that said, in other news, in other startup news, we have pushed back launch about a week. We were supposed to formally launch on Valentine's Day, and that's when I essentially sent out our first email. But we were still figuring some things out in the back end and the front end of our software platform. So you have a smooth transition when you activate your kit. So we are actually launching March 1st. And it seems much more appropriate. I don't want to rush anything. Right now we were just basically redoing the website to match the new branding that we got back from like our branding strategy person. And y'all, it looks dang good. There's something about some good branding. There's something about it that just like makes me really excited. I think it's because in the age of AI where everything is becoming commoditized and everything is very repeatable, branding, in other words, discipline and taste, I feel like are going to be the only things that aren't affected as drastically by artificial intelligence. So even if you have a B2B software company or a consumer-facing product, I think you should definitely consider investing and or looking more into branding because it's unreal. I'm very excited to get some of those wireframes back from a branding person and hopefully approve them very quickly so we can launch because we're only a couple days out right now as of this recording. We essentially have small batches of inventory in my home, which is going to be a very interesting process. I will say the hardest part of this entire thing has been figuring out how to print shipping labels. I don't need anybody to laugh at me, but it really has been. There's something about printing out a dang shipping label that it's just not my favorite thing to do. So I'm hoping that I'll go back home and troubleshoot the little printer label that I bought. It's like a thermal printer. Sometimes half the time it connects, other times it doesn't.
He said, tell me your reason. All of your heavens are sin. And she says, hold me, love me, kiss me like the sun and all the rainbow salty. You against my lungs and I'm free. I am free. But wake me up when you need a favor. Wake me up away from the street. I've been killing time, I've been anxious.
Good morning, friends. It's Tuesday. I'm currently at Kiln, which is a networking space, so that's why I'm kind of whispering a little bit. I'm in one of these like solo booths. I just grabbed some coffee and I'm waiting on one of Money's friends because he invited me to co-work here today. So it's such a cute space. It's so cozy. I'm gonna go upstairs to get a sneak peek and then I'll show you guys some footage. My voice, I realize, also sounds crazy. I've been on calls a lot, so I'm trying to like protect my voice.
Home to me. Wake me up 'cause you needed something. 'Cause I don't wanna go back to sleep. I've been looking back when you call me. You come home to me. You
Wrapping
come
up the
home
work day, and then I have this cute little office that used to be somebody's old office. Shout out to Ben for telling me I could stay in here, but I just wrapped up work. Oh my goodness, I forgot how nice it was to like work amongst people, which sounds insane. So hopefully if the startup scales, there's also a bunch of other companies and you can see their like posters on the outside of the wall. If the startup scales, I would love to, who knows, maybe we'll have our own co-working space at Anteros. But for now, I'm gonna head back to the house because Imani's out of work. I bought some bibimbap at the little like food truck situations out here. There's so many of them. Bibimbap was a solid, I'm gonna give it like 7 out of 10. The gochujang sauce was also fire. But we're gonna Uber back home, and I believe we are going to see some poetry tonight, which is new for me. The West Coast is such a different culture shock. If you're from the East Coast, if you know, you know. Both amongst like partnerships. I met with a new investor this morning too that invested in like a gut microbiome at home testing kit company. So we have similar business models. So I'm looking to hear back from her. But yeah, so far I'm enjoying my time in Portland. Everybody's been super kind. And we'll see what the rest of the week has for us as we prep for launch.
You come home to wake me up 'cause you needed something. You come home to
because I'm trying not to be obnoxious, but you guys, look at this view. It's stunning. It was so foggy earlier this morning and it finally cleared up. So I'm gonna be taking my calls from, I found this little quarter nook breakfast area because obviously I don't want to bother anybody, but I don't want to go into one of those solo like meeting room things because they get really stuffy once you're in. Then it calls back to back all on Monday. So that was a little bit gruesome. If my voice sounds a little bit funny, it's because I've just been on meetings like all week and I'm starting to lose my voice. So that's a fun time. The only thing that's left to prep for launch is the website. And so that is currently / actively being taken care of. I'm gonna have to solve some stuff with the engineers because we may or may not be switching platforms, but all is looking pretty well at this point. Fingers crossed.
watch you move like that. Watch you move like that. Got me spinning around the sun. I can't choose my past, but I can choose you next. I don't wanna let you down. Oh baby, come ride with me. Slide when we get high with me. I love when you roll with me. Talk to us, no lies. This ain't no love song. Ain't far from confessions. I feel your intention and you by my side. Take my mind to another place. I feel your thunder, I feel your rain on my skin. When it's
Day 2 on the Nike campus. We're here with Imani's family and she's giving us like a whole full rundown tour since I was just co-working with her in her work building. But there's like a garden, there's beautiful bridges, there are tracks, there's gyms, there's R&D buildings. It's sensational. So if you're into fashion or maybe just like, I'm sure they're hiring across all roles here in Beaverton, Oregon, highly recommend the Nike campus headquarters.
ways to follow intention, ways to unknown dimensions. Take my mind to another place. Feel thunder, feel your rain on my skin. When it's time down, show me where. Ways to follow intention, ways to unknown dimensions. Baby, why you move? Baby, why you move like that? Baby, how you do it like that? I just need you right here. Maybe it's the moonlight, yeah. Do it right, yeah. I can't see these skies.
launch day for Imani's magazine. Look at this beautiful building, guys. We're just setting up, we just finished setting up the space and we're waiting for everybody to trickle in.
5 check.
We're the staff. We're here to support our girls.
We are staff. We are.
I'm gonna
And I've been handling out hors d'oeuvres.
It all started with the first issue, which is over there, where I wanted to write essentially my own stories of Black women traveling, because I felt like there wasn't enough cool things of Black women traveling. Like, we see them traveling, but they're showing people who pre-ordered, they have a vintage postcard that I got at like an estate sale. So yeah, I thank all the people that I got the chance to interview. I also want to thank my friends and family for coming all the way from South Carolina, Wisconsin, and Minnesota.
Be alive after a recap of launch day.
Right now,
We're in a very overstimulating environment.
this is a lot.
Recap. Oh, I can't even think right now.
I can't think. Like, I got water,
We have water, hydration.
hydration. I'm losing my voice.
You are losing your voice. That's what happens after events. Everybody wants to chit chat with you. But today was a good day. We're ending it with people watching folks play with Beyblades
Yeah,
for the culture.
somebody's culture.
I look crazy right now. Hi, friends. I just wrapped up sending the last couple email edits to our branding and strategy person to wrap up the website for launch, because it has been quite the struggle trying to get the new site going. We're wrapping up payment processors and then doing the connection for the DNS tomorrow. I'm gonna be flying out of Portland and then landing in the Midwest early in the morning, and as soon as I land, it's basically back to work and on calls to get the website up and going. So I've had such a lovely time here. Imani's also with me because she's flying to Hong Kong for her first work trip, for her first business trip. So yeah, I'm not gonna be flying out till later tonight. She's gonna be leaving first, so we're gonna do a little bit of a walk before we have to board, and hoping that although her launch went well, mine will also, knock on wood, not break in the process.
Dans les eaux, un peu malgré moi, l'appel est si fort que je me perds un peu parfois qui on est, où l'on va. Au moins je sais qu'un bout de mon âme demeure chez toi.
Like our first warm day. I can barely see the screen, so I hope that I'm in frame. But it's Monday. We officially launched the website the first week of March. We had a couple hiccups and delays on our end, but nonetheless, we've gotten really good feedback since people have visited. the emails went out to the people that were subscribed to our wait list. Now, something I've noticed / have been talking about just briefly is how my schedule looks so different from being a founder in like the building mode for the last like dang near 2.5 years, but obviously more aggressively since I left corporate, to now having my day-to-day looking like basically social media marketing and distribution. So that's my current focus / priority. And it's funny because all of the product convos, legal compliance, those don't go away. So technically we're still building, but not to the extent that we were before.